Wholeness, welcome. This is Josh of Integrating Presence and Inner Skilled. And today I have Dr. Kelly Bonhoff with me. Dr. Kelly, how's it going?
It's going great, Josh. I'm so happy to be here.
It's okay to call you Dr. Kelly or Kelly. Is that okay?
Yeah, Dr. Kelly would be great.
Cool. Well, who is Dr. Kelly and what kind of work does she do?
Oh my gosh, this lifetime has been about know thyself for sure. But my name is Dr. Kelly Bonhoff, and the beautiful journey that I've been on has been about really just navigating life the way I was programmed and conditioned in the early 1960s. I had three jobs, kind of keep my mother healthy, my father happy, and my siblings safe. And when I was 10, I encountered the energy of child trafficking, and that in and of itself was its own journey through. And luckily, we moved out of that area, and that activity stopped. But it helped me to uncover this need I had, which was a soul-driven need. I find out now that I became a nurse. And then I became a trauma therapist, and I've always loved children, but I always also understood that I was very comfortable in the dark, in the darkness, where what we would call evil existed. So that for me is energy vibrating with intentional lovelessness. So as I was in this darkness, navigating darkness, getting married, having children, working, living life, surviving like everyone else, I have had the opportunity of nearly 40 years with severely traumatized children, teens, and families in different kinds of settings and different kinds of countries where this dark energy exists and where we're all learning to navigate through and to heal. So, for those who are listening that have had adversity in childhood, I just want to give you a sense of if there is anything that I might be sharing that your nervous system begins to get nervous. I just would like you just to stop and be still, drop into three deep breaths. And be in the moment and just allow the energy to flow. Just allow the resonance of anything that, touches your heart is fine, but if something doesn't sound right or is confusing, that's all right because there's a lot that I learned in just the last 4 to 5 years in my own journey that really navigate this heavier energy as children that we navigated through. So, who am I? Well, I have remembered that I am divine love in motion and that the adversity, that energy, I call it the shark tank of energy in my book, that it's this energy that we were all got accustomed to in the world, the routines and in our families and our cultures, but that's not actually who we are. We came in, we parachuted in as souls to have this experience and to heal this type of adversity. I'm speaking specifically about the trauma that children go through when they are trafficked from the inside out. And this is a beautiful kind of segue just to understand from my perspective and my lived experience that we can heal from within any trauma, which is just a wound. The word actually means wound that causes our mind, body, and spirit to become imbalanced, to be disconnected from our spirit. So the mind kind of takes off in one direction, the body has the cellular memory, and our beautiful soul and spirit, well, it's got to take a minute to rest because we're trying to survive. So what I've learned in this journey is that the energies that are heavy and dark in our world right now, within our families, within our communities, within humanity, specifically related to trafficking, is here to be seen and to be healed through us, within us. And so I found a way through this energy, and that is what I share with people and families from around the world so that they can remember that there is no power on this earth that can take anything from them, that they are the healer, they are the divine within themselves that they've been looking for. And so this is the message that I will spend the rest of my life sharing. It's one of empowerment, it's one of freedom. So I help families transform fear into freedom.
Well, that's beautiful, Dr. Kelly. Thank you for setting that up and sharing. I want to give my own disclaimer here that I am not trauma informed. This is something that I'm studying and that I look into from time to time. And we talked a little bit before the show, and this is audio only because we were, whatever reasons, the tech wasn't working again. It's happened for a few things for me since I've been doing this, this and that. And so, anyway, I invite Dr. Kelly and anyone else out there who's listening to this, if I say anything that's maybe re-traumatizing or just any tips in general, because I'm green to this, and I know this is not something to take lightly. In my usual, I tell people my usual spiritual karate moves, they don't really work in the same way with trauma. So I'm here to learn and to do the best I can. Hosting Dr. Kelly to talk about this. The thing I want to mention up front too is safety. We've talked before the show, probably not to go into the deepest, darkest depths of this, but we want to go into the healing aspects of it. But I just want to say, I just wonder how many people don't really know the depth, the darkness, and depravity of this. And even saying the word child trafficking, to me it's kind of vague, but in a way I kind of know what it is and kind of don't. So in a way it's a good term because it can sanitize it in a way to talk about it that doesn't really drag people down and throw them off to addressing it. And at the same time, I wonder if it is really hitting home how just put it this way. In Buddhism, we talk about suffering and the end of suffering, right? And so if you look at the most extreme forms of suffering on this planet that could be possible, I just think that this goes into that and that there's a possibility for having this end as well. Now, how we go about it, I like Dr. Kelly's approach of going internally. That's one way, and I think we'll just focus on that. Before we get more into details on that, do you have any other kind of suggestions for how it could end other than that? Especially maybe for the masculine role of protector and you know, wise action and also lack of complacency and dismissal, maybe, or turning the other cheek in the wrong way, I guess. And then what is needed for this conversation for safety too? You know what I mean? Because there are some pretty powerful people, some pretty ruthless people, I would venture to guess that are wrapped up in this and tied up in this. So for the listeners, but mainly for the healers working through this, and for those victims still probably still going through this or are just coming out of it, what do you recommend for safety right off the bat?
Well, what I encourage everyone to do is to, as they're listening, to close their eyes and just ask a gentle question. I wonder if this podcast is important to listen to in this moment. Maybe there'll be a moment later that might be of interest. So I encourage listeners to tune to their own heart, to their own readiness, their own willingness to navigate this journey with you and I, Josh, as we do this with the utmost of trauma-informed care, safety, energy, intuitive love. And I know that each one of us is sovereign, which means that we already know what will keep us safe. It's a matter of tapping into that and trusting that. So the listening of this particular podcast is an opportunity to just gently, in a curious way, inquire, I wonder if this is something that will be uplifting, that will help me expand and understand and heal just a little bit more today. And if that's the case, then please stay and navigate this. And at any point, if it doesn't feel good to you, if your nervous system goes offline, if your heart starts to beat faster, then take a break. It's all right. You are safe where you are in this moment.
Yes, very good point, Dr. Kelly. And so that's the main thing. Before we get into the healing aspect, the masculine thing I mentioned, or the protector role for those looking to do that, for those seeking maybe more active external roles, I guess, even though I don't want to spend too much time on that, or any other approaches you also recommend to your own before we get into your own. And then the other thing that's coming up is if you want to just give a little bit of a background of education and clinician wise and certifications, stuff like this, if you have it. And also, I was just curious if the spiritual aspect is allowed to be, or how does that come into the professional thing? Because I know, like in standard psychology and things like this, there doesn't seem to be a lot of spirituality brought up by the quote unquote official practitioners. So how does that factor in here too?
Right. So let me see, since I'm a vintage age, I'm gonna address these to my remembrance. I'd like to say about the masculine and feminine energies that live within us all. So whatever gender that you feel most comfortable with, what that was assigned to you or that you embrace right now, within us is an energy of masculine and an energy of feminine. And what we're doing right now as a human family is we are learning to balance both. And so any action that would be taken to assist in the protection of anyone comes from both masculine and feminine. And so if you find yourself intuitively moving in an active way to assist in any way to help, no matter what the age, trafficking can occur at any age. Certainly, if there is a child involved, if anything is happening within a family, which it happens, in my experience, then to take action by any gender, male or female, in some ways is not as important as understanding that you are both masculine and feminine energy. So as you act in, the question becomes, what would loving kindness do in this moment? What would the divine do in this moment? Well, we would act. We would act to help the all involved to move into safety. That is the person who is offending, and that is the person who is being offended. So there, of course, three-dimensional world talks about all the laws around the issue of trafficking children, that is force, fraud, and coercion. I will tell you, as someone who's experienced this personally, that I didn't know anything at 10 years old about a law or what anybody would have said in a courtroom about what was happening for me. And I say it for me specifically because I came to heal the energy of this particular dark thought form, if you will, that has been since the beginning of our human race. I mean, we have had trafficking since the beginning. And so, in the end, for me, I as a clinician, the training in psychology and in nursing in no way touched on spirituality. And so, over the last 5 years since my own awakening, I have created a bridge between psychology, trauma-informed care, developmental, childhood things, family systems. I've created the bridge so that we could take science and spirituality and, in a more holistic way, help our families heal from within. Now imagine this, how beautiful this is, that with just a few simple practices a day, that a family can move in the direction of freedom without a law, although those can be helpful. And the guides on the side, if you have a therapist or a healer of some kind, those are very important people in the hero's journey. And also, though, the most important person is you, is actually integrating your own wisdom, resilience, and genius. And so, what I discovered, what I remembered, and what I wrote in the book, the biggest aha moment I had was within every traumatized family lies a hidden power, a sacred potential waiting to be remembered and awakened. Now, there is no force on this earth that once you have an awakened person or family that can stop the healing. It's unstoppable. It's fully possible. And yet our world has been created up to this point with us in the shark tank which are the systems around us that keep us dimmed down, dialed down, dumbed down. And so when we have these what I call echoes of adversity in our childhoods that start very young. I believe for those of us who have trauma upon trauma upon trauma upon trauma, that it starts really at the genetic level at conception. And then we're moving through, kind of a warrior state, if you will, to stay on the earth in survival mode as we remember on this hero's journey. And so for me, as it relates to the masculine and feminine, it's the harmonization of the energies, regardless of your gender at birth. And I believe that the psychology, the science, and the spirituality are bridging now. And as we move into more holistic healing and energy, our families are quantum. So our healing will be at the quantum level, at the level of our spirit. And so, because I found a way through to bridge both the science and the spirituality, this is why I came. And I am able to bring it into the lives of families and the everyday lives of the messy and maddening, rip and run because I've literally lived it. I've lived it and I'm through it and I'm free of all of my disease, whether it was mental or physical, of all my addictions, of everything. And so I know that we can heal from within. And as families heal exponentially, it's like this emotional contagion, but it's a contagion of radiance. So as one family member remembers and lightens up and holds their radiance, it automatically, without anyone saying a word, moves into the field of the next family member, whether they live close or not. It's quantum. So I hope I answered those questions, Josh. Is it related to your curiosity around those
Yes.
particular topics?
Very beautifully put, Dr. Kelly. What's coming up now is this notion of, um, well, you said, huh, well, there's a few things, right? And what would you say to those forces who use this excuse to maybe off-put karma that, somebody needs to take the dark role and humanity is asleep. And so we're just here to help waken up, to awaken humanity because they're just so much in their slumber that we're playing a role that nobody else wants to play, and that we're actually helping humanity wake up. And so that gives them, so to speak, allowances for doing the type of things or perpetrating the type of things they're doing, which I think is complete BS. It does seem to kind of work that way in a sense, but we don't obviously need that to awaken and to come into our full potential and full actualization, realization, and progression, and what we're here to do. Of course not. But I've heard this argument in some circles, or not really an argument, this statement, I would say, and I would just commend you too. You've got the healing side of it down, which is great. And I think we talked a little bit. Sorry to go in so many different directions here. We talked a little bit before the show how this stuff trickles down, or that's the sense I get. Maybe not everybody experiences this, and your credibility is so high when people go through healing journeys like this. You got somebody from the outside, like me, just looking in, but you've lived through it, and so you get the honor and respect right off the bat for people going through this because people that are going through this, they just kind of blow off anybody even if they're super wise, super empathic, because they haven't gone through it. And when you've gone through it, like you have, you come out the other side, and then you're a hero for people still going through it. And the good sense of the word hero, right? Because we have this thing going on in society that pretty much everybody on everybody level experiences this victim, bully, hero, or bully, victim, hero archetypes that just kind of perpetuate. So I don't really need to go into that. You probably understand what I'm saying there. And so that with that, you know, balancing all that. So to sum up
Mm-hmm.
again, the false allowances that are given for this type of thing to do, and then I guess yeah, how do we get out of these perpetuating cycles of victim, bully, hero archetypes, I guess. And the sorry, I'm really stumbling on my words here because this is such a huge, I guess, emotionally loaded, energetically loaded topic that I'm just kind of tiptoeing around things and feeling my way here. So I think that's enough and get my stuttering out of the way here. Sorry about that.
So let me see if I can bring some clarity around what you are navigating through. So hero for me stands for honoring the energy of remembered oneness. So when we think about there's only one of us here, billions of souls having experiences. When we look at what we would consider evil or darkness, that is contrast to the light. And when darkness is looking at light, we are contrast to it. So, one of the things we can get entangled in, no matter where we are in our awareness, is that we are all one sacred family. There are those who came to play the roles of catalysts in these darker energy, and yet that doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt when they hurt us or when we hurt others. So it's important to remember if you think about yourself as, so my spirit animal is hawk. So if I'm in the weeds, if I'm starting to get emotional about people hurting children, and and I've been in many situations where I've moved children, pulled children, protected children, and all of that. So I'm familiar with the energy itself. The way that that energy stays in our world is for me to resist that energy. In other words, if I'm going to fight the energy of evil, then I'm in their energy. So the easiest way to heal the energy of that particular situation, whoever it may be, is for me to open and to radiate a witnessing position. In other words, I can see and feel the starlight of that soul as it is offending. And so, in that moment, that doesn't mean they should not go through court or they should not be imprisoned or they should not have justice. Of course, they should. That is their journey to also move through that for themselves and their own growth. But the difference is that I want to expand this just a little bit. Humanity has been at this for a long time, our families are ancient souls, thousands upon thousands of years. And so this is a speeding train that we cannot pull the emergency brake on. So, in order to dissolve the energy that we are healing, so our world isn't going to heck in a handbasket. We are seeing everything coming up that needs to be healed. Now, do we put our arms, our awareness around all of it when we look at the duality of good versus evil, light versus dark, when we're still talking about dark forces, when we're still talking about offenders versus offended, we are still in a dualistic polarity language, and that's fine because that's part of the journey through. And when you are through into the energy of freedom, as you imagine yourself as a hawk, if you will, flying over the earth, looking at everything in its totality, you realize we're one sacred family healing a human subconscious psyche that has been traumatized for millennia. And so, what is the way through? Does that mean that we have to be happy about those who are hurting others? Absolutely not. People who are being unkind and uncaring? Absolutely not. What it means is, can we hold the energy of understanding they are playing a role, that their true nature is of light. And it is just as important to hold our radiance without judgment. So there are three key wounds that humanity, our families, and us as individuals are healing. The first is separation. None of us are separated. We're all interconnected. The second is judgment. judgment of ourselves or anyone else. And so, as long as we are pointing a finger or blaming dark forces or an individual or a group, we are still in three-dimensional framework, and that's all right. That's part of the journey. At some point, you start to ask a different question, and it's really not about the answer. The question is, I wonder what else is actually on here. Because from my experience, those who are hurting others are some of the most anguished people that I have ever felt the energy of. In other words, no excuses at all, but an explanation to be had around, I wonder what is happening for that person. And in my own 10-year-old experience, in my own life, when the very first person made a choice to engage with me in an unhealthy way, I made a decision too. And that decision was absolutely terrified, and I didn't want him or them taking my family or my siblings. And so there's the coercion. So when the soul who was offending and the soul who was offended, which was me, we had a moment right there where we could have chosen differently. And what we did was we said, we're going to navigate our way through this because this healing of this particular situation is so deep and has been going on for so long. It's going to take us a minute to figure out that person and me, we're one. We're one family. And we both came to heal from both polarities, from both contrasting sides. And this is the part that when we go into archetypes or talking about a narcissist or a victim or this, that, and the other, those are labels, those are categories. When we're talking about diagnostic codes, I have complex PTSD. That was one of my diagnoses. Well, that's a label, that is a programming, that is a conditioning. That's not who I am. I have healed all of any diagnostic codes, all addictions, all of it, because I was able to heal and remember that I am a sovereign being and I can heal myself from within. So that's the beautiful part of the journey, which means I can look at what is referred to as a dark force, a dark being, a dark agenda, a distract, whatever it is. All of that, Josh, is distraction. It's distracting us from, even in the spiritual community, it's distracting us from going within deeper, to know thyself deeper, to heal ourselves, to help us to integrate all of our own darkness. Yes, we've got the shadows, and they want to be as free as any other part of us. So once we embrace those shadows, and they said, and for me in my own personal experience, those shadows were like, yeah, I'm finally free. What was required, though, is I needed to experience the anger, the rage, the anguish. My body needed to move that energy through, and I learned to do it without judgment. So I went from self-destruction to self-devotion. And that is what families and individuals through. So, for children who are finding themselves in these situations, the children born now within the last 20 years are more powerful and more aware and more conscious. And they are going to make different choices and different decisions. And so will the offenders, because the light, the energy that dissolves this heaviness is greater now than this heavy darkness. So, I say this to say, you're on a teeter-totter and you have light and you have dark. It's the same thing. It's just a spectrum of light. And when we get into 0 point or in the middle of that teeter-totter in neutral, Christ consciousness, where we say, I see, I feel, I know the dark. I see, I feel, I know the light. All is well, as it is, all at once. And that is how we will heal every energy that we believe is adverse to us or that we do not prefer as we move into the ascension.
Well, thank you for that. It feels pretty good hearing what you have to say. And I will just, so abuse is never okay, right? There's so much you
No,
touched on here, and we're coming up with, so that's not what you're saying. You're not saying abuse is okay, right? So
no.
let's just be really clear on that, because that might lead some people to think that, we'll just whatever, and then we'll just heal from it later. So I want to make that clear, and then it has to be, to me, it has to be a really strong commitment to truth, and honesty, and balanced with non-harming. So a really strong commitment to non-harming, because if we get
Correct.
in the spiritual game and we start looking in, this extreme of eternalism, then that gives all the excuse to not abide by ethical behavior, because yeah, it never ends. So we'll just take care of it later. You know what I mean? And so where I want
Yeah.
to, we want to get to the root of this, and I'll get back to that. And this gets into really metaphysical, spiritual territory. And yes, I would agree, on ultimate level, there's no good or evil, but we don't live in an ultimate level of reality, right? So we can get closer and closer, like you illustrated there, but unfortunately, not everybody's there yet. But yeah, so everything you say, I'm all for it if it's going to be for our long-term benefit and happiness. I'm talking like multiple lifetimes. And I do not have the wisdom to discern whether or not, this is the best approach. I'm open to seeing where it goes and how it is. So yes, it's just I lack the wisdom. And this remembering thing you talked about, I think is a huge problem, and how that even is possible too. I've heard lots of New Age explanations, and they may or not be how it is, because again, my wisdom is lacking, my discernment is lacking. I mean, they're nice concepts, but until I can directly see and know it, without a shadow of a doubt for the truth, then I'm still open to other explanations as well, not believing or disbelieving, not buying into and not disregarding this. I'm open to getting as close as I can to the truth, if not the whole thing. So now, the other thing you mentioned is the perpetrators. Yeah, they need that. This needs to be handled with too. And you illustrate one way to do that, because obviously the answer isn't going and having lynch mobs and silliness like this, because like you mentioned how wounded they are as well. It's a huge thing. Forgiveness. Maybe I'm old-fashioned, and we can't force forgiveness, right? At all. It has to come at the right time. It's a huge energetic relief and burden letting go of, but again, it can't be forced when it's not the right time. So I think where I want to go with this is, when the like 5 minutes we have left here. Um, and then the families, because I hear a lot of this is multi-generational, and yeah, so, and some of the ruling families are, I won't go into that now, but I really want to get into the root, the deepest part of this. As you say, it's been going on since time immemorial. How do you look at this? What can you get to the root of this?
Well, in the end, the very first step that any family can take is to start with an intention, which is we intend to discover we intend to heal trauma, unlock our hidden power of resilience, wisdom, and genius, and remember what is sacred. For any family who sets that intention, I have very simple things they do every day that includes look to the star, stillness, thankfulness, affirmation, reflection, and showing up for themselves, their family, humanity, and the natural world. When families give minutes a day with intention, attention, and inspired action, as they slow down the routines of life, as they begin to get back, as they choose through their free will to wonder, is there more to our family than I know? Can we heal? I think in the I think for me, the very first thing I understood and still understand is most families don't recognize they're living in survival at all. And so the very first thing I do is help them to assess their own day to day to see, these are stressors. Would you like peace of mind? Would you like some freedom? Would you like just to rest for a minute? Because every nervous system of a family is very nervous. And right now, our world keeps families very busy in the tech and very busy making a living and very busy running around. So there's no time to slow down. So This can be done easily. It can be done within family life. And as the message begins to move within communities, that the healing, the unlocking, and the remembering is within themselves and each other, this will take off and we will be able to heal. And the energy of adversity, whether it's in childhood, teenage, adult, couples, families, will begin to diminish because we are healing with intention, we're unlocking with intention, and we're remembering with intention.
I couldn't echo this. That this is what drives karma, cause and effect, is intentionality. So absolutely, in a way, it doesn't really matter so much in a way at a certain point what's happened in the past, because right now, with intention, there's a choice to influence the future with intentional thought, speech, and action. Absolutely, couldn't agree more. And don't take my word for it. Go to wonderful practitioners and healers like yourself, Dr. Kelly, who understand this from the inside out and know that every little thing can make a difference. Drop by drop, the water bucket's filled, and this is possible. And don't think, it will happen to me, because it does happen. It can happen gradually. It can happen suddenly, but it also happens gradually. And the key, like Dr. Kelly is saying, is intentional thought, speech, and action. That's right. And so, with the proper guidance and the proper support, and teachers and healers, and especially self-healing too, when it comes to that, yes. And so, Dr. Kelly, how can people find out more about your work? Tell anything else you'd like to promote, what you got in the works, anything like that, and then take us out on a message, please.
Absolutely. So my the website is onesacredfamily.com. Everything I'm doing is there. Lots of free resources. I've finished a 400 resource library, 400 resources for families. It's called The Hero's Journey for Families. It is my legacy of my lifetime to create a path for families to their way to freedom. You are empowered. You are fully, fully, fully capable of healing, unlocking your wisdom, resilience, and genius, and remembering what is sacred, which you and your family and humanity and this world are sacred, which means worthy of unconditional love, devotion, and reverence. You are free. You are powerful. You are loved, and you are divine love in motion, moving through remembrance.
Beautiful, Dr. Kelly. Thank you so much for doing this. And may all beings come to know their most ideal, optimal healing. And may all beings everywhere realize awakening and be free.